In this video, Scott Jennings continues to be the one-man wrecking ball of CNN. Joe Rogan has his most controversial guest in a long time where they discuss the Epstein Files. Candace Owens goes off on both Theo Vaughn's podcast and Stephen A. Smith's podcast. We have Michael Knowles cooking a full panel of lefties, and Bill O'Reilly drops some facts on Chris Cuomo, telling him that the Democratic Party is over. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope all's good wherever you are. Full jam-packed video for you guys today. The first couple of clips you're going to watch here is of Scott Jennings, again, continuing to be a one-man wrecking ball on CNN, single-handedly dismantling every Democrat fake news person on that network. I don't think he's long for CNN. I think when the contract's up, our boy is out. But I don't know how much they're paying him. But I guarantee you, this man, if he goes solo, gets his own social media, crushes it, way more money to be made. Let's get into it. Scott Jennings schooling Caitlin Collins.
They acknowledge as they go. They've obviously updated the information they've put out on their website. And I think they have some political leash here to make a few mistakes because people look at this government. I mean, today we spend about $6.2 trillion. In 2019, we spent $4.45 trillion. How did we go from $4.5 trillion to $6.2 trillion?
Tax
just
cuts,
the last
CRs.
5 years. No, this is spending. This is federal spending. And so, and on the VA memo,
these mistakes are impacting everyone's lives, like literal lives.
On the VA memo that we've been talking about, these job cuts. If you read the memo, they're going back to 2019 staffing levels. The VA operated in 2019. We somehow lived with those staffing levels.
Yeah, but you know, it was passed in between then. The PACT Act, which was to help burn pit victims.
I know.
That's why it expanded.
I know, but here's the point that Republicans are making.
Yeah, but that's more people who needed eligible, who were eligible to.
Do we need 70,000 federal workers to cover it? My question, and what the Republicans are asking, is simply this: is it not possible for us to approach getting back to 2019 spending levels, or maybe did we go too far with the size of government? It always gets bigger. It never gets smaller. There will be sob stories. There will be sad stories. But overall fiscal health of this country matters.
It can't be a talking point that these are sob stories. These are, again, people's livelihoods and also the health of this country, right? They have some of these mistakes that people keep talking about are gutting our agencies that are taking care of, I don't know, paying attention to the bird flu, Ebola, these things that actually can have detrimental impacts on the American people.
We have Ebola in the United States?
Well, we are helping the world be a safer place as well, Scott.
I mean, on the bird flu, you know, we did. Biden slaughtered all the chickens. I don't know if there's any left to kill.
On that note,
come on, Scott.
It was a bloodbath. You all love that word.
You can laugh about this, but these are things that people are actually scared about. I mean, measles is coming back. There's so many things that are happening that our federal government makes sure.
You're saying Elon Musk caused the measles?
I am saying what is happening in this government right now with Donald Trump appointing.
You saying Donald Trump caused the measles?
I am saying that what is happening in this federal government under Donald Trump, allowing Elon Musk and allowing all these people that he appointed to run this government like this, is actually making us unsafer for the American
Elon
people.
Caused the measles. You heard it here first.
Here. Scott Jennings, Johnson, not what you said. Thoughts on Elon Musk taking this trip to Capitol Hill? Do you think it was the right move?
Absolutely. Good idea. And I'd just give him one more piece of public relations advice, which is at some point they'll have collected enough information and put together enough of a presentation where they could go up to a hearing, have members of Congress ask them questions about it, and really display for the American people the waste, fraud, and abuse that they're finding and what they might want to do about it. I do think members of Congress should be brought in on this. I think this meeting is a good step. Eventually, a public presentation, I think, would help the president and the whole Republican Party with the project of cutting government.
What should that look like? On Capitol Hill or?
Absolutely. A hearing. I think we ought to do it.
You think Elon Musk should testify on Capitol Hill about what he's doing?
I think that Elon and his team and the people that the president designates who have been working on this project, I think they should have no fears because I do think they are finding things. I think the American people need to know about it. And I think if the president is going to continue to sell a program where we're reducing the size of government, they're going to have more than enough evidence to make the political case.
Well, Theo?
I think the Democrats on these panels, these people that are like arms for the Democratic Party, they get more ludicrous. We're talking about the measles. Oh, measles is coming back? Listen, lady, it's not. Okay? There's a few cases. It's not coming back, guys. You won't hear about this next month. It's not coming back. We know how to get rid of measles. Calm down. But they have to find ways to blame Trump for something, and they're running out of options. The guy's doing too much. He's doing too much too quickly that they can't paint a narrative. Every day he's crushing something or signing an executive order, and they can't keep up. And it's glorious. Trump said, we will get tired of winning. I'm not tired yet. Now, in this next segment of the video, you're going to watch a clip of Joe Rogan, who had Ian Carroll on his show. If you don't follow Ian Carroll on X, I suggest you follow him, whether you like the guy or not. He's an entertaining character, and he always brings the facts. This is Ian Carroll and Joe Rogan talking about why he thinks we're never going to see the Epstein Files. Let's get into it.
All the information that's getting disclosed, supposedly this administration, what do you have the least faith that we're going to come to
Epstein,
a conclusion?
for sure.
Epstein.
And I think it's because of Israel. I think that because I think when you really dig into Epstein, his entire network was Israel. It was clearly like Ehud Barak was the ex-prime minister and the ex-head of Israeli intelligence. Leslie Wexner was one of the most powerful pro-Israeli philanthropists. The whole organization was Israel.
So
and I'm not saying it was all of Israel.
It was all an intelligence gathering, and
it was targeting Americans. It was targeting American officials and the American president.
Right.
And the CIA does have interest in those targets too. Elements in the CIA does. Certainly they had help from the CIA, and certainly they had help from these other organized crime and intelligence operations. But you don't, like, so for example, Dan Bongino, the new, deputy director of the FBI, he recently had this clip that went all around where he said on camera that he had a source that he trusted deeply. And he's an informed guy. He was at a Fox News interview, and the source told him that Epstein was working for an intelligence agency in the Middle East. And I don't know which one, but someone in the Middle East. And to be fair, we all already knew this. We already know who he worked for. At least I think so. But I'm looking at, okay, Dan, so if this giant group of Jewish billionaires is running a sex trafficking operation targeting American politicians and business people and stuff, you think they're working with an Arab or Muslim nation in the Middle East? Like, you think that Leslie Wexner is devoting his entire life to philanthropies on behalf of Israel, but then he's going to work for Saudi Arabia when he's doing this trafficking ring?
Right. But if someone says to him that they're all working for a country in the Middle East, knowing he knows what that means, but not specifying, doesn't he have to repeat it that same way?
He also has to repeat it the same way because he won't get the job if he says Israel.
Exactly.
Because Israel has so much control over our government right now. And I'm not saying that all Jews are in on something. Clearly, internet. Thank you.
Internet.
And Joe is definitely not saying that.
Definitely not.
But Israel's government is as vulnerable to the deep state effect as the American government. But I would argue that Israel's government is way more vulnerable to it because of the people that founded Israel and the way it was founded. It was founded in a modern time, much more recently, it was a revolutionary founding. And I can totally sympathize with the Jewish desire to have that state. Like, I get it. But because of the way that happened, the people that founded Israel were a bunch of organized crime figures in America, the Jewish mob, that were helping with money and with arms trafficking to get the guns there because they had to have guns. And it was the Rothschild banking family sending a whole bunch of money and getting the declaration in the first place. And then the people that were there, the three different organizations, the Irgun, the Lehi group, and the Haganah, those were the three like paramilitary groups that fought to found Israel, and they're like the heroes of Israel, which I understand the narrative that they're heroes. But when Israel was officially founded, they officially designated Irgun and Lehi as terrorist organizations because they had been bombing civilians. They'd been bombing British civilians. The first official act of terror before they changed the definition was the bombing of the King David Hotel, where these terrorists, these Lehi and Irgun terrorists, a bunch of different groups, the guy who planned that bombing later became the prime minister of Israel. They were bombing civilians. And so when those are the groups that are fighting to found that nation, even if all the Jews there are wonderful people, the leadership is inherently composed of these people that have been deeply corrupt for all time. And so you get this fertile ground for this kind of deep state effect to take power. And when you start to research the heads of state of Israel over history, you realize that a bunch of them were in those groups doing those terrorist acts and have done a bunch of dark stuff because those were the people that were at the top of that military organization. Like those terrorist organizations reformed to form the IDF.
And what's interesting is
party.
You can talk about this now,
Exactly.
post-October 7th.
It opened wide open.
Post-Gaza.
You want to know a funny story, actually? I didn't know shit about it. And I started doing 9/11 stuff. And I was doing a 9/11 video on my YouTube. And I knew about the Dancing Israelis conspiracy theory that is very much a real set of documents. And I knew that I'm not allowed to talk about Israel for some reason. And I didn't really know why. And I realized, like, I better fucking understand this thing before I crater my new channel and career on this topic I don't understand. If I'm going to take a stance against Israel at all, I should understand why and how. So I started doing research, and I shelved that research, and I switched to researching Israel and Palestine and the history there and what's going on. And I finished the video, and it was October 6th. And I was like, I was very worried because you weren't allowed to talk about it. And I had just made this whole documentary about the history of Israel, Palestine, and the propaganda and what it all was. And I published it on October 6th on my locals channel. And I had this lean back, and if that's the end of the ride and I get canceled for this shit, so be it. And then literally the next day, and I'm not saying that October 7th was a good thing, but I'm saying that literally the next day, the entire internet was ablaze about Israel and Palestine, and everyone was talking about it.
Wow.
And it was the weirdest fucking coincidence. And suddenly it was like, oh, all right, let's fucking dig this thing open. Because unfortunately, I think that the state of the Israeli influence that sustained them for so long, that was essential to them surviving this long, I think that it has grown cancerous to the Jewish faith in general, because Jeffrey Epstein is the perfect example of this. Jeffrey Epstein was the world's most prolific and evil sex trafficker that we know of so far, ever. And he very clearly was a Jewish organization of Jewish people working on behalf of Israel and other groups. And so that's a dark stain on Israel and on the Jewish people if you do it.
Now, Mossad is something that I've been talking about for a long time on this channel when it comes to the Epstein Files. I do believe that if Mossad doesn't want them out, we will not get them out. And listen, I like Pam Bondi, I like Kash Patel, but the higher powers that be, the longer this drags out, Pam Bondi's going to start giving me establishment vibes, because there's no way this should be taking this long. Ghislaine Maxwell, she's still alive. Somebody can just go there and interrogate her. We can have the answers. Let's get the ball rolling here, guys. Now, speaking of the Epstein Files, in the next segment, we're going to watch Candace Owens not crush it only on one podcast, but on two podcasts. She did Theo Von's podcast and Stephen A. Smith's podcast, not on the same day. I think they were like a day apart. I'm a big Theo Von fan. And if you're a fan of stand-up comedy, you probably are too. And I think he does have the best podcast out there right now. The guy goes from interviewing Donald Trump to interviewing his garbage man on the next show. Now, on this clip that you're going to watch, they talk about the Epstein Files. And in the clip that you're going to watch of her with Stephen A. Smith, they talk about what she calls a crackhead Zelensky. Let's go.
Like, well, why do you think there's such a strong relationship between the two countries then?
Blackmail. I think blackmail. And I think this is the reason why we don't get to open the Epstein files. We don't get to open the JFK files. And I think it's a form of gaslighting us to pretend that our special friend and ally isn't just a and by the way, parking aside America, other countries too. You investigate anything. I mean, I'm investigating Brigitte Macron, and Israeli blackmail comes up in Morocco. Israeli blackmail comes up in. So to pretend that we don't know that Israel is involved in blackmail operations is foolish. And again,
well, I think all countries are probably involved in them.
There are, and I think that they have been like they have gotten it down to a science. And there's no question in my mind that like sexual blackmail is what Jeffrey Epstein was involved in. And I don't know if that means these people don't know when they go to these parties that the girls are underage, and then it's like, haha, we've got you on tape, whatever it is. And we can even, taking a look at the Diddy case, blackmail, these powerful blackmail operations are definitely operating. And
that's actual blackmail,
yeah,
too.
It's true blackmail. I mean, if you have hidden cameras and you're capturing people doing drugs and sleeping with underage people. So I think these are blackmail operations, and I think they've been going on for decades in America.
Speaking about Epstein, right? How do you know he's not just a Jewish guy who was being perverted or whatever, and that he was doing business? Like, there's no real connection that he works for Israel, though.
Well, he had passports. Yeah. So, and then it's also his ties to Ghislaine Maxwell, Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell. The whole Mossad attended his funeral. He died in very weird circumstances. I don't think even people who are pro-Zionist would deny that he was obviously Israeli-American intelligence. And he had weird passports. I mean, he had like a Saudi Arabian passport, an Israeli passport, an American passport.
Oh, he's perving then.
And yeah, and under different names, by the way. He had working passports of these different countries with different names. You can't just get that. You know what I mean? You can't just get these passports without being connected to the intelligence services. And it was never made clear why he was so rich. So who was giving him all that money? Was this like black ops, our tax dollars going to give him this illusion of wealth and power so that he would party with all of these billionaires? And yes, you're right. Blackmail operations happen all across the world. I think America, in terms of just how America has been seized, that's the only explanation for how Israel's able to expand with such a small population. And somebody has to be fighting their wars. Somebody has to be funding them. We're funding them. So I think we've just become like the piggy bank to them.
But if that's the case, what is the cross relationship? Because I mean, I think the Middle East is historically a place that's not super chill, So that's probably what a lot of people would say is like, oh, well, you need an ally there, right?
Which is so stupid. I hate when people just say stuff. Like one of my things that I
mean,
always...
it's a strong theory, though.
But it's not. It's just people just say things that are said all the time. Why the hell do we have any business in the Middle East at all? Like, why are you just trying to tell me that, like, I need an ally? And I actually don't.
Guys, before we get to Candace Owens absolutely destroying Vladimir Zelensky and shocking Stephen A. Smith, if you don't mind just smashing that thumbs up button for your boy, that goes a long way to help me out. And also, if this is not your first time here and you're not yet subscribed, hopefully this could be the video I can earn your subscription. Let's get to Candace Owens.
Ukrainian President Zelensky and how he went at him and what have you. Now, Zelensky, if I remember correctly, you didn't speak too highly of him. I want to make sure I'm quoting you accurately. You called him a homosexual actor. Is that true? Did you call him that?
I also just called him the neighborhood crackhead, kind of just goes around asking for money. I've called him a welfare queen, ghetto. This is the thing. The media kind of had me depicted throughout BLM as this person that uses these words to describe Black people. I'm like, no. Let's be very clear. When I'm calling somebody like Zelensky a welfare queen, there's a reason for that. You come here with your hand out, asking, making demands. It's funny because I was having a discussion with my husband about this. And, you know, it's people that tend to need the most that make these sorts of demands, and they're so arrogant. He's taken billions away, unaccounted billions, by the way. So you and I have to get to work because Zelensky wants his borders protected, and we can't have our borders protected because that would be a racist thing to ask for. But he's allowed to demand that you and I get to work because he's spent all the billions. His wife is shopping in Paris. The oligarchs in Ukraine are all buying yachts. And yeah, I have absolutely no respect for him, but I want to say I have not respected that man since day one. This is not something that's new. I just saw him coming.
It's not something that's new, but what about Trump and Vance and how they conducted themselves? You and I might disagree on this particular issue because I don't disagree with what you're saying in terms of, I was on the record saying, listen, you're coming with your hand out, you need money. You might not want to be confrontational. You might want to be a bit more diplomatic, Zelensky, because you're the one that's in need. And Trump wasn't wrong when he said, oh, you don't have any of the cards. You don't have any of the cards. The flip side to it, however, is that the press conference, you're in the Oval Office. We know this is the White House. This isn't someplace in Ukraine. And he's got broken English, and you got the vice president interrupting him. You got them, I thought, somewhat bullying him to some degree. I just didn't think it was necessary. It was a good look. That's where I'm coming from. Am I wrong in feeling that way?
No, I think you're perfectly, I mean, these are your feelings. They're valid, right? If that's how you felt. For me, I felt it was refreshing. I'm so tired of politics. I know they always button it up for us. They're constantly telling us, oh, this, and saying things that sound good, but don't actually result in good things. And I think it was sort of the frustration of how much he has taken from America to not come with some respect. And I likened it to, even when you go to your granddad's house and it's your birthday, your mom kind of makes you wear something special. You know, he's going to give you a card and slip some cash in there, $100. Granddad's always good for that. And you just come with some decorum and some respect. This dude has been wearing military fatigues for like 5 years now. Okay. Put on a suit. As soon as he gets out of the car, Trump's like, well, he's dressed up. This should let you know, this should signal to the public that what he's doing is an act. Why? Give me a scenario, a reason why he can't put on a suit. Even if you're in the midst of a war, why can't you put on a suit when you're coming to ask for money? Well, because he wants people to see him as a guy that's downtrodden in the trenches. And he's not that. This guy's been on the cover of Vanity Fair. He's been on the cover of Vogue. He's been on the cover of Forbes. He's doing photo shoots. He did a 3-hour podcast with Lex Friedman. He asked and was declined a spot to go to the Oscars a couple of years ago. And so this is making a mockery. It's just making him put on a suit.
See,
you know?
this is why people got to be careful about messing with you, because I was getting ready to disagree with you until you threw out those last things. I didn't know he tried to go to the Oscars. I didn't know he tried to be on the cover of Vogue. I didn't know that stuff, Candace. I honestly didn't know. Okay, that does change it a little bit.
And he is a literal actor, by the way. You know that, right?
That I know. Well, I will say this, though. Any sympathy for the fact that Russia did attack his nation? I mean, that there is some sympathy for that, right? We see the rubble. We see the catastrophe that is Ukraine. We see Putin bombing them, for crying out loud. We've seen that happen, right?
Yeah. So the thing for me is, and the reason why I say that I've had this opinion since the very beginning, is I don't rely on politicians. I think all politicians lie. And so I was reading the transcripts leading up to this moment of Putin's speeches and Biden's speeches and trying to discern what the truth was. And Putin was saying, you guys gave us assurances that NATO was not going to expand 1 inch eastward into our territory. Essentially, NATO is a military. We were putting a military on his border, despite in 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, as a condition, an agreement for them to agree to take down the Berlin Wall. We promised, and you can go look at this in NSA declassified documents. James Baker was the Secretary of State at that time.
Yes, he was.
We promised them that we would never move NATO eastward. So you have to imagine the memory that they have, and they're going, why are you now doing that? Now all of a sudden we're saying that Ukraine is going to join NATO, and he's saying this is unacceptable. America can't keep changing its mind. And so when I was able to validate what he said and to read the speeches, you cannot walk away from that without an understanding that we are the aggressors. Everything that we say Russia is doing, recreating the Soviet Union, we are doing that. What is the European Union? What is NATO? And we've been getting away from it for too long under this guise of quote unquote spreading democracy. So I fundamentally disagreed with what I saw as Western propaganda trying to paint Putin as a monster for holding us to our promises and not telling the public that. He just randomly woke up one day and just said, I want to do hood rat stuff with my friends, and he went into Ukraine. That's a fairy tale. That's not what happened. And not beyond that, like you saw when he sat down with Tucker Carlson, he asked to join NATO himself. Why are we not having a productive relationship with Russia? I call that Cold War hangover. People that grew up under their desks afraid of a nuclear bomb can never see Russia outside of being villainous. And quite frankly, I think Zelensky He's suspended elections. He's locked down churches. He's locked up nuns. I'm a Christian. I don't like this guy.
On Stephen A. Smith. Calling Vladimir Zelensky the neighborhood crackhead is a great analogy. And it's funny to me that the Democrats, the party that keeps on saying that Trump is going to bring us into war, is complaining when he wants to stop World War III from happening and wants people to stop dying. You can't make this stuff up. They are the party of war, the Democrats. They would rather fund this thing for another 5 years. Pelosi could be making a bunch of money. This is what they want. And we've seen with Trump's speech in Congress that these people hate America. All the topics and all the issues that the American people were on the 80% pro of that Trump crushes, no men and women's sports, securing the border, most Americans are into that. 80% are into that. And the Democrats always find themselves on the 20% end of that conversation, which is why they're going to keep losing if they keep this up. And you know what? I'm here for it. Let's get to Bill O'Reilly, who lays down the facts to Chris Cuomo as to why the Democratic Party, it's over for them. You've had your time. You need to rebuild. Come back in a few years. After we've had 4 years of Trump and 8 years of J.D. Vance, you can give it a shot then. Let's get to it.
Donald Trump last night did what he wanted to do. Number one, he got on the record that his accomplishments in the first 6 weeks were fairly extraordinary, which is true, both good and bad. And number two, he taunted the Democratic Party into making a myriad of mistakes. I think the Democratic Party is on the verge of collapse. And I liken it to 1931, when Herbert Hoover and the Republican Party basically said to the very suffering American people in the Depression, we're not helping you. You got to do it on your own. It's all about self-reliance. We're not going to give you any safety nets. That led to 5 consecutive Democratic wins. 5. Not until Dwight Eisenhower, 20 years later, did the Republicans recover. I see the same scenario for the Democrats. So I wrote a message of the day on BillO'Reilly.com, which I know you read every morning, first thing. It said, hey, didn't the far left, the Elizabeth Warrens, used to be against war, Vietnam, they're against Iraq, Afghanistan, they didn't want to whack Soleimani, Biden didn't even want to get bin Laden. Well, wasn't that their posture? But now, all of a sudden, they want to go in Ukraine and go and go and go and go. What happened? What happened was Trump hatred. And that's what the headline is of the speech last night. When you are hating someone, you lose all perspective. You lose all feeling. You're consumed. And I wrote a book that's going to be out in September called Confronting Evil. And these people who did all these terrible things, they all had one thing in common. They hated. They were just haters across the board. That's what you saw in that chamber last night. You saw it from Green I thought Al Green was the guy who was saying, love can keep us together, or what, that great soul song, and all of a sudden, this guy from Texas looked like he should be starring in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's up there flailing around, and I'm going, wait, you think you're helping your party? Do you think anybody at home watching this likes this in the House of Representatives? But he couldn't help it because he hates Trump so much. And that's across the board in the Democratic Party.
Well, it's not just the Democratic Party. It's across that chamber. It's across the country, as manifested in social media. I see our ruling class as echoing social media more than they do reality. I do not look. I'm around the country all the time, and I don't confront what I do on social media. You're on to something. It's gotten so absurd, so extreme, so stupid.
I have to disagree with you. I disagree with you. All the polls say that the Republican Party, 90%, is backing Trump. Even though the tariffs might not work, they're saying give it a little time. It's 90, that's a big number, okay? It's the independents who swing, and that's why Trump is president. It's the independents swung toward him. Now, last night, as you rightly pointed out, the independents could not have supported not only the little boy who got cancer and now was so thrilled about being a Secret Service agent, but the 95-year-old grandmother who asked Donald Trump to get her grandson out of Russia, and Trump didn't get applause, okay? The high school student who got hit in the head with a volleyball by a trans guy and his brain damage didn't get applause. I mean, you're sitting there and you're going, something is very wrong. And when you are a hater, and it doesn't matter whether it's Trump or it's your guy across the street, you lose all perspective. You're consumed by that emotion. And that is what is happening.
Listen, I hear it. You're not wrong in your diagnosis. It's just incomplete. I mean, literally, I just sat with Tucker for several hours today, who's like the spirit animal of this administration. And there's plenty of animus to go around. And the reason that party, I see numbers more low to mid 80s right now, which is low for Trump within his party, which makes sense given the economic kind of, let's say, passive progress that he's made since he got in, which is to say none economically. You can't look at Trumpism, you can't look at MAGA and not see a hateful dynamic.
I like what News Nation's doing. They're a centrist network. I enjoy it. I think we need more of this out there. I think it makes for good conversation to have very left-leaning people, very right-leaning people, and then they have some people on the network that are somewhat in the middle. And I like the dynamic versus just being one echo chamber of your own ideas and everybody being on the same side, even though they are my side. And I tend to agree with when I watch Fox News. I know what they're going to say because it's what I would say. Versus watching News Nation, it makes for a fun dynamic. It's a little bit more entertaining, even though I might not agree with half the people that are on there. I enjoy Bill O'Reilly. Now let's get to Michael Knowles, who made his 100th appearance on the Piers Morgan show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, which everybody at this point is familiar with this show. It is like the Jerry Springer of online politics, if that makes sense to you guys. If you're old enough to remember Jerry Springer. Oh man, I loved me some Jerry Springer. That was great. This is a horrible way to have a conversation, but it's definitely entertaining. Michael Knowles schools this whole panel. They talk about abortion. They talk about what is a woman. They talk about J6. And of course, the Democrats are on the losing end of all of these topics. Let's get it.
Talking about not telling women what to do with their bodies, then, I would encourage you, Brian, not to tell the roughly half of women in America not to go take their bodies and drive to the polling place and vote for pro-life candidates, which is what happens. I want to clarify here. You're saying that the women on the Democrat side wore pink jackets. I'll try to clear it up for you. About half of women are pro-life.
It wasn't well said
put
at
it in
all.
blunter terms so that you can understand it. But if you want to tell them what to think and what to do with their bodies, I suppose that's your prerogative.
I very much understand it, Michael.
Hold on one second. I have a question for you.
No one
I'm not
told
so sure
them what
that you
to
can.
do or what to think. No one did that.
My question is, you're saying that the pink jackets represent the attack on women's rights, but that the only two issues we're talking about here are abortion I'm sorry.
He didn't say
I thought
that.
that was your implication, that there was an attack on women's rights.
No, I mean, maybe I need to
Democrats
clear
were
things
wearing
up for
pink.
you, Michael, because don't put words in my
Perhaps.
mouth.
Why were they
okay?
wearing pink? Why were they wearing pink?
Go really
I'll clear it
slow,
up.
Brian. Go
Okay.
really slow for him.
Okay, I'll be very clear to you, Michael, and I'll repeat what I just said, and maybe
Why
you
were
can
the
get
Democrat
the MAGA wax
congressmen
out of
wearing
your
pink?
ears, okay? I'll explain it to you, okay? There are a lot of women in this country that I speak to, apparently you don't, that believe Donald Trump is a threat to their rights. Now, a lot of different rights.
Which rights?
Abortion is one of them, Michael.
Abortion,
So, Michael, hang on.
Okay, that's what I said.
There are women
So
in this
what-
country.
what-
Michael,
where did I get it
The
I'm
right to
trying
vote.
to clear
There's
it up
something
for you.
called the SAVE Act, Michael.
I need another
A right to
20
vote,
seconds.
including
I'm
your
trying to
pro-life
clear.
women.
Okay.
Michael, I'm
So
trying.
far you've agreed
Michael,
with
hang
me.
on. Michael, I'm trying to clear it up for
I'm
you,
holding.
as you just said, okay?
Thank
so
you.
I
I
understand
appreciate
you're
it.
obsessed with this I understand you're obsessed with this transgender issue, but even
And
though it probably doesn't
transgenderism.
affect
Okay,
you
so
in
I
any
was
way,
totally
shape,
right.
or form.
Okay, I'm glad you've clarified.
trying
it
to
for me.
answer you.
But no, you were not. You were not
You
totally
didn't.
right. You're
You
totally
showed that I was
wrong.
right. So I just
You're not letting
if
me
you'll just
even
let me ask
answer
the
your
one question.
question.
I was
You keep
trying to answer
interrupting
No one
me.
can
before you
hear.
rudely
If you
interrupted
talk
me.
over each other, nobody hears any of you. So,
Let me
Brian,
finish,
finish
Michael.
Brian, finish your point. Then, Michael, you respond.
The point I was trying to make is that if the idea with transgenders and women's sports is about women's safety, which I do tend to agree with, then you should also agree with the fact that women in this country, some of whom are raped or victims of incest, are forced to have that baby. If you care about women's rights and women's safety, then let's do it across the board, Michael. Did I clear that up for you, Michael?
All right, Michael.
You cleared
Thank
up
you,
that what I
Brian.
said was right. So I guess my question then is, if the pink represents the Democrats' advocacy of abortion and transgenderism in children, then what you're saying is that women's rights to Democrats are the right to kill their own children and to castrate the ones who survive.
Here
is
we
that
go.
right? Do I have that
The right
right?
to kill their own
Dear God.
children.
You
That's
can't-
your.
don't even
that's
answer
your.
that.
That's
Don't
what
even give him the
abortion is.
dignity of answering
No,
that
hold on,
question.
hold on. I'll answer it. That's your definition
wasn't a question, it
of
was a
what a
statement,
legal
but you
abortion
can answer
is.
if you like.
Okay.
But you'll
okay,
let
and
those
I'm
kids grow up
responding
and
to your
get killed in a
stupid
school
statement.
shooting, right, Michael? That's how pro-life
Say it
you
again.
are.
Sorry, I
Oh,
was
before,
trying
okay,
to
before
hear
hang on,
speaking,
hang
over
on.
each other.
Before I go
You're
to
so
Matt for his,
pro-life that
before
you
I
won't
go
do
to Matt, I'm
anything
going to ask
about feeding
Jojo.
starving children.
Jojo, I'm going to ask you a question, a
Starving
simple
children?
question.
What are you talking
Give me a
about?
simple answer, Joe. To me, staggering that there were some Democrats there sitting down and not applauding that family. Whatever your politics, that's about a family of a woman whose life was desecrated in the most appalling manner. The least you can do is show the family some respect. Put aside partisan politics. The second thing was the Democrats holding all these signs, which I just thought, we've got pictures of it here. I just thought it was so childish. It was so like sixth form common room stuff. You know, their little signs, false, 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 etc. I just thought that was embarrassing. And again, it comes back to my original thing, which is the Democrats just do not know how to tackle Trump, particularly Trump Mark II.
Yes, I was waiting for the signs to read, I am rubber and you are glue or something like that. It was totally pathetic. To your point on Lake and Riley and the other victims of illegal aliens who have come into this country, one distinction between the Trump administration, first one, and the Biden administration is, of course, crime is always going to happen. It's a fallen world. But President Trump was able to bring illegal border crossings down to the lowest levels that we've had in 25 years. Just 6 months ago, we were told by Joe Biden that he couldn't close the border because he needed some new bill from Congress to give people amnesty. And it turns out that wasn't true. President Trump in 6 weeks was able to bring illegal crossings down to the lowest number in a quarter century, and he didn't need any new law to do it, which means what we all have known for a long time. The Democrats encouraged illegal aliens by the millions to come into this country, up to 11,000 people in a single day. And they didn't deport criminal aliens. And some of those criminal aliens, even the ones who had been arrested for prior offenses, went on to attempt to rape and kill American citizens. So that's the difference. Are you actually going to try to do something about the problem? So I agree with you, Piers. I think that what the Democrats did last night with DJ, the 13-year-old cancer survivor, with the family of Lake and Riley, I think what they did was terribly immoral. But I think it was also just basic political malpractice. How on earth are you going to disrespect a childhood cancer survivor? And by the way, they're the ones who made this political, because not only did they disrespect that young man in the room, but then afterward they went on television. Nicole Wallace on MSNBC said, oh, it was a heartwarming moment.
Well, I'm going to play that
and
clip.
I just hope he doesn't kill him.
Feeling of a guy in a hurry, determined now to make a legacy. And I also got a feeling at the same time of a Democrat Party in complete and utter disarray and utterly clueless as to how to deal with Donald Trump.
Without question, there's that old observation from Dr. Johnson that hanging concentrates the mind. When a man looks death, be it political death or physical death, in the face, it can focus him very much. And I think on both counts, Trump has done that. So he's moved very quickly. He promised that we would get tired of winning. I am a little bit tired. I'm not tired of the winning, but I am tired. It's an amazing flurry of things that he's accomplished in the first 6 weeks. And as you say, Piers, the speech was extraordinarily well received. CBS News, which is no fan of President Trump, had a poll out right after the speech, showed 76% of viewers approved of it. And when you drill down into specifics, the numbers only got better from there. The key to the speech was that President Trump was having a good time and the Democrats didn't know how to react to that. And then he had that one little trap for them. He said, I've come up here 5 times and these people won't applaud anything. I could cure the worst disease. I could accomplish the greatest feat. These people will not applaud for me. And he made the Democrats look ridiculous because they had their noisemakers and their signs. And he dared them. He said, I dare you to stand up. They wouldn't do it. They're so intransigent. And so at one moment, as we know, is probably the moment that stole the show, Trump had a 13-year-old boy who's fought cancer for 6-7 years, made him an honorary Secret Service agent. If there's one thing in the country that everyone should agree on, it's that that's a really sweet moment. And these Democrats couldn't be bothered to stand up. Many of them couldn't be bothered to clap. They looked awful. I think it was a nasty thing for the Democrats to do, but they just looked so awful. No wonder
Piers,
Trump is getting great marks.
I believe the point that she was trying to make is you have these Capitol Police officers. Several of them have lost their lives, were beaten with their own batons. Some of them have traumatic brain injury. But yet, why didn't Donald Trump invite any of those people? I'm just wondering. So you can't have it both ways here. While I don't like the comment that was made, I also don't like the fact that MAGA Republicans seem to back the blue only when it's convenient for them. I want to say one other thing really quickly about Michael.
One person was killed in political violence on January 6th, and it was a Trump supporter who was killed by a trigger-happy cop.
Okay,
so
I want to respond to that right now, and that nonsense that you just said.
Brian Sicknick couldn't be reached for comment, could he, Michael?
Brian Sicknick, hold on a second. Brian Sicknick died the next day. And for you to claim, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Give me 30 seconds to make my point. Excuse me.
It's in the autopsy.
Give me 30 seconds. Can I finish my point, please, to what you just said? And all I'll need is 30 seconds to do so. If you are making the case on this national show that Brian Sicknick's death the next day had nothing to do with January 6th, then you are an
I'm
imbecile,
not making that
sir,
point.
with
The
all due
medical
respect.
examiner made that point.
Just look at what the scientists
What a hill to die on.
ridiculous.
Great job, Michael.
Let me bring it.
I'm just reciting what the medical
I tried.
Let me bring in Matt
your
here.
false accusation.
All right.
Okay, so
let me bring in. I'm glad. Let me just say.
Shame on you.
I'm glad, Jojo, you now find things disgusting. It's interesting what you find disgusting and what you're not prepared to find disgusting.
The death of a police officer, Piers? We're talking about the death of a police officer. You're talking about the actual death of a police officer, Piers. I know you know that those pardons were wrong. I know you know that because you've said it. And I know that you stand with those officers. So I cannot believe that you would defend Michael Knowles dragging that man's life.
If you're asking me,
reading the news report,
if you're asking me for my opinion, if you want my opinion about January 6th, I thought what happened was a complete disgrace. It shamed America. It should never have happened. I also felt that a lot of the people were given far too lengthy prison sentences. And I also felt that by comparison to what happened to the people who caused a lot of damage to property and who attacked police officers during the Black Lives Matter riots, there was a very good, strong argument that there was a double standard and hypocrisy about the way that the left and the right treated these things when it came to their own side. So that's
Michael Knowles from the Michael Knowles Show. If you don't follow him on YouTube, one of the better, smoother debaters that we have on our side. I still think that it's amazing that right now in 2025, there's still some people on the left that don't want to admit what a woman is. Can you not see that this was a big part of why you lost? Now, they lost because of the economy. The economy is always going to be the big issue of why you lose an election. The woke stuff was a big part of it, though. The two big things were the economy and the border, the same reasons that Trump won in 2016. If Obama's economy would have been so great, like they were saying, oh, Obama's great economy, if it would have been so great, Hillary would have won. It wasn't as great as people want to tell you. Trump won because of the economy, because of the border. The same reason he won this time. People want more money in their pockets. People want their families to be safe. But the woke nonsense, as long as the left keeps going with the woke nonsense, they're going to keep losing. So please, keep going with it. I'm happy. America woke up. And I'm here for it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash that thumbs up for your boy. Consider subscribing to the channel, help it grow. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out, everybody.